back with another episode of the Tech Tips. Today I'm going to be talking about drivetrain maintenance, specifically cleaning of the drivetrain. When I talk about drivetrain, I'm talking about the bike's transmission, so we're looking at our derailleurs, front and back. I don't have a front derailleur on this bike. Cassette, gears in the back, chain wheel, gears in the front, the chain itself, essentially. You see my bike, I'm missing my rear shock right now. I'm doing a little work on that, so don't be too alarmed. Basically what we need to do this job essentially is going to be, first we're going to need our cleaning products. So I've got the degreaser here, which is a non-aerosol, slightly less potent version of a aerosol degreaser like this. It's also biodegradable, which is nice, which works really well in juncture with a chain cleaning device like this one here. There's a few different ones of these on the market. Which one you get is not really important. They all do a really good job. I have the Park Tool one, just because. Next, what we're going to need, I do have a aerosol and the same degreaser that I would use in the machine in a push-push or the aerosol. The reason for that is because the machine itself just goes on the chain, so it kind of misses the chain wheel, the cassette, and whatnot. So I'll have a little bit on hand that I can spray onto those parts to clean it. The reason why I have the aerosol and the other one, so depending on which type of bike I'm using, which type of chain lube I'm using, sometimes I need something a little bit stronger, sometimes it's not necessary. So if it's not necessary, I'll always go with a little bit more diluted, little friendlier to the environment option. Next I'm going to need some sort of a brush. Basic toothbrush will work great. Otherwise, Park Tools, there's a few of them on the market again, but I like this one a lot from Park Tools. To me, it's an essential piece of my toolbox. Basically because, one, you have your bristles here, which are going to be much more rigid than a regular toothbrush. So they're going to essentially be just more effective on getting the grime and the dirt off of your parts. They're also changeable, so you can just change the bristles out and keep the rest of the piece. And on the back end, you have this hook with the teeth on it here, which this is great for getting in between the gears on your cassette, or if you have multiple gears on your chain wheel and your crankset in the front. It does a real good job of getting in between them, getting the grime that can be stuck between them out. There's other ways of getting in between the gears. Obviously, you can take a rag, another piece that you might need. You can take that and kind of use it like floss, and there actually is cassette floss that exists. However, that's also disposable, so I mean, you end up having more waste with something like that than you do with something like this, which does an excellent job. Last, what we're going to need once everything's clean and dried up are two different types of lubes, basically. So I've got Tri-Flow here, which in this instance I would use just for lubricating the pivot points on my derailleurs, front or back, if need be. And generally speaking, once you clean it, it is a good idea to put a little bit there. And then a chain lube. So for my mountain bike, which I have here, I use this Squirt, which is a wax-based lubricant, which basically means that it's going to be really effective at keeping my chain clean, but it won't last as long. Fine for my mountain bike because I tend to clean it after each ride anyways. So, next up, basically the reason for cleaning your transmission is this, the more you keep it clean, the smoother it's going to run, the less wear and tear you're going to have on your parts, your chain, your cassette, and it's also a little bit more pleasant. You won't have stains on your leg or your pant, or if you have to put your chain back on, you won't have a big blotch on your hand necessarily. I don't know, I've seen some bikes come in where I'm pretty sure the people used vegetable oil or canola oil or something like that to lube the chain. Don't recommend that, especially if you're bringing your bike in to be worked on by a tech somewhere. They will not appreciate it. Ignore that. So, the first step, you want to make sure that your chain's not going to be too close to your tire. It just gives you a little bit more room to work with. So I usually tend to put it closer to my smaller gears. Generally, I mean, it's just to give you more space to work with your machine. And so what I want to do with this is I've got two holes on the top right here, which I can put my liquid in through. So I don't want to put my liquid in before I put it on the chain itself. So I'm going to install it first. So basically I just have a clip in the front, clip in the back on this model, pop them both off. The top comes off like so. The bottom part, which has all your brushes and the little foam cleaning bit, I'm going to put on the bottom. part of my chain. Put the cover back on the right way if I can. There we go. Put it on like that. Next, I'm going to take my degreaser, and you'll see on these chain cleaners there's always going to be a fill line on them. Basically, you just want to put the liquid in up to that point. It's not the end of the world if you put a little extra in, but it's probably just going to end up sloshing out of the side a little bit. So if you want to avoid a little bit of a mess on the ground, just make sure you don't go past that line. Alright, that's good. So now, all I want to do is basically backpedal. And that's going to pull my chain through the brushes, which are being dipped in the liquid. I have a really noisy cassette. Alright. There's not really a specific number of revolutions that I want to do. I want to have the chain definitely pass completely through the machine at least once. And I'll tend to go a little bit more than less just to make sure that I have a good clean, a good coverage. And then next, once I'm satisfied with that, just undo the clips. Being careful to keep it level so I don't spill everything. Take the top off, take the bottom. And I'll put it right back together. And I'll just put that aside for now. Just get my hands a little clean. And I'm going to take the rag and I'm just going to wipe the chain down, kind of dry it off a little bit. And next, what I'll do is I'll take my spray bottle, spray everything down, derailleur included, the front wheel, and then I'm going to go with my Park Tools brush and basically just brush everything down, do all the way around all the gears, wipe the derailleur down, do the same thing with my gear in the front, and then dry everything off. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of Tri-Flow, put it on the joints, and then my chain oil, and I'll put that on. So I'll do a demo of that. I'm also going to do a demo of how to do a more in-depth clean, so where we're taking everything apart. So I'm going to talk about that next. So to do the more in-depth clean, basically we need all the same things that we need for the clean on the bike, and I'll always pass the chain through the machine before, even for the in-depth clean, before I take the chain off. So I've done that first step already here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to take my chain off. Before I take the chain off, I'll always put it on the smallest gear on the cassette, just because it makes less strain on the derailleur as I'm taking it apart, and it also means that I'm going to have an easier time. I know exactly where it is when I put the wheel back on. So now I've got a chain with a quick link on it somewhere, right there. I'll just get that to a place where I can grab it easily. I love SRAM for that function on the derailleurs. Shimano fans probably think I'm crazy, but the bike tech in me really is a SRAM fan, just because of that. And the fact that they work real well as well. So with the quick link's super easy. You can just pop it together, take it off like so. And I'll put these aside. Take my chain off. Now I've got my wheel off. Now I want to take my cassette off. So I'll get my cassette tool here. Put that in. Now here, two extra things that you'll need if you want to do the in-depth clean. Chain whip, and I mean, you can use, basically it can be a socket, anything that's big enough to grip your cassette removal tool. I like to use the Westcott, just nice and simple. And I'll put my chain whip on that. There, turn it down. Depending on the type of chain whip you have, sometimes it can be, if your cassette's being real stubborn, what I'll do a lot of times is just grab the chain whip with a rag or something like that, just to have a little bit more padding. Alright. So I've got the Exo Eagle transmission, so my cassette's all one piece. A lot of the time you're going to see different types of setups like this. Sometimes it's going to be all separate pieces, sometimes it'll be one piece like this, sometimes we'll have a few different sections. Generally speaking, it's not a huge deal. When you're putting the cassette back on, it's literally impossible to put it on the wrong way, as long as you go from biggest to smallest and you put the spacers in between. Just put that there. And I'll put my wheel aside. Now I want to take my crankset off. So some cranksets are going to need a crank puller to take them off. In this instance, the bolt that holds them on is also has an integrated holder, so makes the job a little bit more simple. Do the rest by hand. Alright, there's that. So one side out, the other side with a through axle like that, you can just pull it. Usually fairly easily. Put that little dust cap there, put it aside. Alright, next I'm going to take the cleaner grease that was in the bottom bracket. I'll just wipe that off with a rag. That's good. Do the same thing on the other end. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spray, and I've also got a little bit of degreaser in a tub here. And I'm going to take my brush, and I'm going to start with my crank arms and my cassette wheel. So basically what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to spray it down. I'm going to take my brush and brush all the grime off on the inside, all the way around. That should be good. Get the teeth. Alright, so now this guy's nice and clean. Give it a good little wipe down here. Dry it off as much as I can with my rag. Still got my dust caps on there, that's good. So put that aside. I'm just going to give a little wash to the non-dry side. Just a quick one. Pretty much the main thing I'm looking at here is where it's going to connect onto the drive shaft, onto the crankshaft. If you have a compressor at home, this is a great time to just use the compressor to blow out any of the extra moisture. That way you're sure that it's going to be nice and bone dry before you reinstall it. So I put that aside as well. And I'll do my cassette, I mean. So the parts that I'm working on right now, they are already very clean. Like I said earlier, I wash my bike after each ride for my mountain bike. When I'm working on something that's a little bit greasier, a little bit messier, a lot of times what I'll do is do this cleaning part, I'll do it in the bathtub or in a sink just to keep the mess from getting everywhere. The back of the brush too. And again, when you're brushing it, you want to keep going until you're seeing what your part looked like when it was new. I'll get that wet down. And since I don't have a compressor, I'll give it a little shake. And I'm going to set that aside to dry. I'll give it a wipe with another rag. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to reinstall is going to be my crank arms. So I've already cleaned and greased my bottom bracket bearings here, so what the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on my crankshaft here. Just rub that in. The type of grease I'm using for this is a high quality bearing grease. So there's a few different ones that you can find out there. There's some that are going to be just for general assembly. Anytime I have something that is a moving part that's going to be pivoting or spinning, I'm going to use a high quality bearing grease on it because it's going to be a little more lubricative, if that's even a word. And it's also going to do, it's going to stay clean longer. It's going to do a better job keeping grime out, do a better job of keeping things moving fluidly. Put my fingers off. And we'll put that in. Put the dust cap on the other side. If you've got dust caps on your bottom bracket, you want to make sure that you're not forgetting to put those on. Otherwise, you're going to have a bunch of dust in your bearings. Not great. It's going to make them wear out fairly quickly. Put the other arm on. Another thing with this, you want to make sure that you're putting your crank arms on the right way. Not the same direction. Not going to be easy to pedal like that. You have a hard time on your climbs. That's the way you're putting them on. Hand tight. And I'll grab my torque wrench, which I've already set up. The torque's usually going to be written on the, it'll be written on your crank arm. Somewhere it's going to depend on the model you have. For Shimano's Hollowtech cranks, you're going to have a compression cap, and then the two, they're the M5 bolts that are going to be basically clamping it down onto the crankshaft, and you're going to have your torque value written for those bolts. The compression cap for those Shimano cranks it's just barely hand tight. In this instance, since it's a bolt that's really holding everything together, my torque value is written on it, and it's between 44 and 54 newton meters. 48 and 54, excuse me. So I've already set this at 52, which is in the middle around, and I'm going to tighten this down. Make sure I'm going the right way. There we go. That click means I've reached my torque value. Take that apart. Next I'm going to put my cassette on, and I know for all cassettes the torque that you want to set it at is going to be 40 newton meters, so I'm going to set that right away. Alright. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on my free hub. And I'm just going to rub that in. When it comes to greasing your parts, I mean, The only thing that'll happen if you put too much on is you're going to end up wasting grease and you might have a little bit more of a cleanup to do. That being said, when in doubt, you're better to have more than not, too much than not enough. So I always tend to be on the side of adding a little extra and then dealing with the cleanup afterwards. You don't want to go too overboard because the grease, especially if you're using a high performance bearing grease, they're not cheap. So you do kind of want to use it somewhat sparingly, but it's definitely the type of thing that you're better off wasting grease and spending a little bit more than wearing down your parts prematurely and having that bill jump up fairly dramatically. Alright. So when putting the cassette back on, you don't need the chain nut since we're going in the right direction of the drive. And we're at 40 Newton meters. That's here. And now I'm going to install my wheel on. So I'll grab my axle, put it aside here. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on that as well. Let's rub that in. Take my wheel. If you've got disc brakes, the only thing you want to make sure of is that you are indeed lining your disc up with inside of the pads. If you have any type of brake that's on the rim, usually you're going to have to open it up, open the brake up, either by disconnecting the cable, popping out the anchor point on the cable, or by flicking the switch if you've got road bike with a caliper brake on the rim. So, I'll screw this in. And if you're dealing with through axles like this is another place where you do have a torque value, which is going to be written on the inside of the torque value where you're putting your Allen key in. In this case, mine is 11 Newton meters. So I've already set my torque wrench up for that. And sometimes with these through axles, when you tighten them down, they can press on the Allen key. So I try to leave as much of my Allen key outside of the axle as possible. Just enough so that's not going to slip and strip it, but to make sure that I can take my Allen key out easily enough afterwards. Because if you put it all the way in, a lot of times it's real difficult to get out. Just about there. There we go. Something like that. Don't have a lot in, it's not easy to pull back out. But we got it. Alright, so now I just want to make sure it's turning fluidly, that we don't have a big loose in the wheel. That's good. And I'm going to put in a little retaining cap here. Next, I'm going to put our chain back on. I'm just going to give it a little wipe down before. With a clean rag. Clean and dry rag. So I'm not putting any degreaser on it, which will interfere with the oil that I'm going to be putting on. And when there are some chains that are directional, so you want to keep an eye out for that. And when they are directional, it's going to be indicated on it a lot of the time. Otherwise, like say you'll have Shimano, well, they'll have writing on one side of the chain, so it'll be stamped with the logo and whatnot, and the part number on one side, and the other side will be blank. The part that is stamped, you want it to be facing out. So the part that has nothing on it is going to be in towards the bike, and the part that has that stamp is going to be towards the outside. For my chain, I don't have a direction. It's nice and simple. So I'm just going to like to put it on my chain wheel first. Go through the frame, around my cassette, on the inside of the top jockey wheel, and then the outside of the bottom jockey wheel. And I'm going to take my quick link. And with some quick links as well, they are going to be directional. They'll be indicate either with an arrow, otherwise they might be curved like these ones from SRAM. I'll bring this up to the camera here so you might be able to see a little better. So basically the little curve in it, you just want that to be facing with the curve of your chain wheel, essentially. That's all it comes down to. It's not super complicated. I'll put one in on one side, one in on the other. Bring these two together. And I'm going to grab a quick link tool, put it in on either side, and I'm just going to pull apart, pop that into place, and then make sure that it's moving fluid. Alright, now let's see. Alright, that's pretty good. So last but not least, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Tri-Flow, second to last I should say. I'm going to take some Tri-Flow, I'm going to put it in the pivot points of my derailleur since I cleaned them out. That'll just help it be lubricated, help it move fluidly in and out as you're changing through the gears. So just a little tiny bit in each one. Back ones here. There we go, that's good. And next I'm going to take my chain oil and I'm just give it a little shake. Some of them do tend to separate the different materials that are inside, so it is good to shake them up like that. And I'm just going to rest on my derailleur and I'm going to back pedal. I'm just going to gently put a little bit of pressure so that there's just a steady little stream coming out, and I'm just going to circulate the chain. I have a really noisy cassette, sorry about that. And I'm just going to circulate the chain basically until it's coated all the way around. If in doubt, again, this is the type of thing, you're better off having more than not enough. The last step that we're going to do is we're going to wipe the excess off anyways. I mean, the worst case, you're going to have just a little bit more wipe to do and you're going to have waste a little bit of oil. But again, you're better have a chain that is properly lubricated and waste a bit of oil than have a chain that is not properly lubricated. So now I'm just going to cycle through the gears to have it work its way in between the links. And I'm going to take my clean rag, and I'm just going to wipe the excess. And that is how you clean your drivetrain. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week with another video. Again, thanks for watching. See you next time.